Hello my friends. As you probably know, I've been trying for some time here to teach what I've been calling music theory, although that's not the most accurate use of those terms you could possibly make. So I try to teach you how music works. Fundamentally, that's what music theory is. First thing you know is that music was invented a long, long time before somebody started having theories about it. People found a string tied across two branches, or they found something and they plucked it and it made a sound, and they thought that sound was pretty cool, and they figured out that if they took this stick and they rubbed it up here, they could make that sound different. And so they went. All the time that was going on, at the same general time, they were beating on hollow logs, doing something that would divide time into usable measurements by sound. And one thing you've got to keep in mind is that all these things were happening all over the world, wherever humans had landed. Nobody knows how long ago they started, but I am of the opinion that it was a long, long time ago, before crawling out of caves, probably before discovering fire. I think this goes way back. Dogs howl and birds sing, and I think we're every bit as good as they are. The difference between them and us is that we are known, seen, and visualized to be very curious about how things work. And so, as people developed these musics and they started and playing melodies, it came to pass that everywhere in the world that we've ever been able to discover, they hit on common structural things. They knew that a note and that same note at twice the vibrational speed were related, were the same. And they knew that you could shorten and shorten and shorten the string and get steps of music and that those steps could become the building blocks for things called melodies. And although there are a couple of different structures, we have things that we call minor chords and things that we call major chords. But ultimately it turns out that it's all built out of the same fundamental structure of vibrations. So somehow or other, humans, we were hardwired to be impacted by these vibrations in the air. Now this is happening at a time when we don't know that air will carry vibrations. We got no clue how sound gets from one of us to the other. We don't know how come when a bird sings we can hear it. It doesn't matter. But we do, nevertheless, care enough about that sound that all over the world we develop a remarkably repeatable relationship with it. And so that's music. is a structure, an ordered structure of sound that can be perceived in space and time. In virtually all my conversations with you so far, I have talked about music in terms of notes, vibrations, tones, scales. I haven't even paid any attention in conversation with you to the fact that I'm playing those sequentially one after another. So they're taking up time. I'm not even addressing its existence. But music is inherently a time-based function. What we do then is we take time and first we divide it into these little tiny chunks and we call those beats. And those beats we combine together into little groups of beats and we call those measures. Those measures we combine together. By the way, we not only call those measures, we also call them bars. You know, music has long been played in bars. So, we might have grouped those beats together in groups of 3 and made a measure out of them, and it goes like this. Well, when I was younger, my what key am I playing in? Family would travel down to western Kentucky, where my parents was born. Okay, that was a 3/4 time. The 4 we'll get to in a minute, but that was repeated cycles of 3. And every time you hear that 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Each of those is a measure or a bar. And then what's going to happen with those is that we're going to fill those measures and bars with a combination of sound and silence. We're not going to fill them with incessant sound, because that would be like listening to politicians talk or something. It would be of no point. Instead, we're going to give them some sound and some silence. Sound, 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 sound. Now, 2 things have happened at once here as we've built this increasingly complicated structure. One is that we're playing our notes sequentially like we were before, one after another. But we've also started playing them harmonically, which is to say one at the same time as the other. And your ear hears these 2 separate and distinct vibrations. And when the sound goes in, your ear draws this pattern on your brain that is the first vibration and the second vibration, and the thing which is the sum of the 2, and the thing which is the difference of the 2. So you're hearing 4 basic vibrations right off the bat, distinct, measurable vibrations when 2 sounds are played. So I'm playing this. I'm going to go over to do this in D. That's a D note, and that is an F sharp note and an A note. So I play the D, and then I play the F sharp and the A together. If I played all 3 of them at once, I would be playing a thing which is another basic structural part of virtually all music, and that would be a chord. Two notes is not considered in common parlance to be a chord. It's considered to be a chord fragment or an interval, but it's not a chord until we get to 3. Okay, so I just told you that's a fundamental structure of virtually all music. What if somebody only sang? One person all by themselves, they sang. How could they do such an amazing thing? Have you ever heard the Tibetan throat singers? Human beings have even figured out a way to take their vocal cords, isolate them from one another, and produce 2 whole different pitches simultaneously and control them both so that you can hear them. This is so fundamental to our enjoyment of music and our understanding of music that it was invented before instruments were invented. So of course when we invented instruments we wanted things that could do that. Because we've been working at that all along. We figured out the notes have their own beauty and their own charm, but when they get together the sum is literally greater than the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. As I said, you put 2 frequencies into your ear, you hear 4. Bingo, magic. On top of that, when one of these strings vibrates, you know, the whole strings vibrating, and then subparts of it are vibrating in there. And all these things called harmonics. So the whole is always greater than the sum of the parts in music. Then once we've got beats in, and we've got measures, I showed you 3/4, you know, common like rock and roll and blues and stuff is 4/4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the world is full of it. 2/4. You see, it really does make a difference how many beats you put together in that thing, because it's all part of what makes up a unit of music, and I'm going to call that unit of music, for lack of a better term, a song. Okay, it may be a symphony, it could be anything, but I'm going to use one word, and that word's going to be a song. And so then lyrics get added in there. Those of you who know me know that I always sing when I play music, or virtually always. Like if I'm accompanying others, I will just play and accompany their singing, and I will enjoy that. But if I'm left to my own devices and somebody says, "Here, play something for me," I will play and sing something for them, because that's how I do. That's what I do. So we're going to get words involved here, but at this moment, aside from acknowledging that that's part of it too, I'm not going to go too far with it. We're going to get spatial differences in space and location. You know, the band doesn't all sit in one spot. For one thing, the chair would be overloaded. For another thing, you've got the sound of the guitar player over there, and you've got the sound of the drummer over there, and you've got the sound of the singer up in front, or whatever. So as the sound comes to you in a non-mitigated human-to-human delivery system, like singing in somebody's living room, you have space there. But you also have space in other ways. On a guitar, the way the sounds are made different has to do with moving your hands through space. And on a violin it's the same. On a harp it's the same, only different, because the strings are of a fixed length and you move your hands through space across that so that you select a different one. So you have actually a physical measurement of space. You also have the structural spaces, like the differences between one vibration and another vibration. And if some of those spaces, those can be drawn on a piece of paper with electronic tools. if those spaces are not wide enough, it becomes unpleasant to listen to. People don't like to listen to things that sound like this, except in certain special occasions, and this is even worse. Those two notes are divided by the smallest possible discrete whole step unit, and that's a half a step. That's a C, and that's a B, and there's no such note as a C flat or B sharp, so those are divided by one half step. When I don't fret that string, the two are divided by a whole step, which is still pretty close, but it commonly is used in our music. The chord we call a seventh, a B seventh, a G seventh, or whatever, anything, say letter seventh, that has one of those intervals in it. It has a one-step interval. The reason I've got that string tuned to that particular pitch is because that way, if I can take these three fingers and I can pick those three strings with them as one, I get a chord. But if I pick these four strings, I get a seventh. These movements of the harmonics and the melodies and the rhythms and the sounds through space and time create a response within us that is also movement. You don't have to know this stuff. You don't have to care about this stuff, okay? I am one of those people who is just fascinated with how things work and why things happen. I was a white daddy, white kid, within the time I've been able to talk for 6 days. And I still am, except my daddy's gone, so I have to ask other people. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing here, is because I'm thinking this through out loud. And on the off chance that somebody else might find it interesting too, I'm sharing it with you as I do. So I'm not sitting here and I'm saying, hi, I'm Professor Wizardo, and if you follow me, you will learn everything. I'm saying that bumper sticker that says, don't follow me, I'm lost, isn't always accurate. Sometimes the ones who are just a little bit lost are the most interesting to follow. You never know where they're going to turn up. And so that's what I'm inviting you to do. But that sound, okay, I'm going to just demonstrate this. You say you're playing along a little song. Into those chords created a little sense of motion. It created a little feeling of it's like you're walking down the sidewalk and you're just steady, you're walking all straight up, and all of a sudden you just lean forward into one step and then you straighten back up and you go on. Well, that's the sort of sense of motion that music creates in you. And it is known from people who get all scientific about this, and they put people in locker rooms and they give them coffee and mescaline, and they play music at them, or whatever it is they do. I'm not really sure. They know that these responses are repeatable with numbers of people over periods of time. It's not an accident that when the Eagles and Jackson Browne got together and wrote "Take It Easy," that song would sell a gazillion copies, because it's just a little different from other songs. The difference isn't so great that you can't relate to it and interact with it. But the difference, there are little odd changes in the chord progression that occur in certain times that make it just a little more interesting. You thought it was going to go over there, but instead it went here, and then it went over there. And you stopped and you said, that's pretty cool, I like that. And so did several million other people, and it turned into a giant hit. because it created repeatable results. You know, if people are voting with their dollars, they're probably not lying. But it all has to do with what makes a song. You know, the blues songs. We talk about blues. Do you ever think about this? A blues song almost never has a chorus in it. A blues song has verse after verse after verse after verse in a very constrained and repeatable structure of rhythm, time, and of order of chord progressions. They're so repeatable that they have names. We have a thing we call a 12-bar blues. That means that it takes it 12 bars of 4 beats each to go through one verse, one repeat of the story. And then it goes through a little thing that we typically call a turnaround, and it goes back and it starts another bar of the story. It doesn't have any breaks, and yet you turn around with another culture's music. Say, take your regular country song, and it's going to have, you know, I got drunk when Mama got out of prison, and lines, and then at the end of the line it's going to have a chorus, and the chorus often is a repeat or semi-repeated structure, but it's different. So you got, if it were a blues song, that would be 2 whole different songs, but they're put together into a structure that starts with rhythm and time and chords. A typical chord, your most basic blues is a 3-chord structure. It's the chords that I have taught you to think of as a 1 chord, as a 4 chord, as a 5 chord. And it goes 1 chord. Oh, my baby, she caught me cheating. She caught me cheating on her. That's a 4 chord. Baby caught me cheating. That's for sure. Say, my baby caught me cheating. She caught me cheating one more time. My baby said it's at the end of the line. Now, if I stop there and do something just like it over again, that's going to be a blues song. But if instead I go, oh baby, I said, baby, please don't leave me. Oh baby, I said, please don't go. I have to find myself another to cheat on. That'd be so hard, you know. Okay, that's your basic structure right there. That's a song. Now, you take Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. His songs didn't sound like that. But they still were built on all the same parts, because these apparently simple parts can be remixed and reconfigured with one another in such a completely indescribably wide range of ways that we get all the music that has ever existed. Now, I'm not talking, I don't mean 1, 4, and 5 can do that, but I mean that within the intervals between a string and the same string half that long, you can have any sound you want. We usually subdivide those in discrete steps. stepwise. The word diatonic, which we hear thrown around all the time, actually just means stepwise, proceeding by steps. On some instruments, not least of which is the slide guitar, we don't have to go in a diatonic or stepwise fashion. We can use any conceivable microtone. And although they are rarely written down, because it's so difficult to write them down, they are used a lot in all music. When a slider plays a little shuffle like that, he hasn't violated music theory. In the first place, you can't violate theory, because theory is nothing more or less than an attempt to systematically demonstrate what's going on when people make music. Describe what's going on. So the music always comes first. That doesn't mean the theory is not worth thinking about, because if you think about it, a huge percentage of the instruments available can be bent. Harmonic players bend notes, guitar players bend notes, they bend their fingers this way and stretch and loosen the strings, they wiggle their fingers up and down, and the string gets tighter and looser, and it vibratos. Violin players can literally slide off. The central point of the position. Wind instruments, I played the flute through grade school and high school orchestras, and in Kansas City's all-city orchestras. You can take, and I played them in some, jazzy groups and rock and roll groups and stuff back years ago before I got drafted. You can take a flute and roll it just ever so slightly in towards you while you're blowing that note, and that note will sag, and you can bring it back up. So you take a thing that is about as obviously not a bendable, you got this tube and it's got all these buttons on it, and every time you push a button down, the note changes. There's no put your finger half a step behind the button. The button is either up or it's down. But you can still bend that note. And musicians use the fundamental note that they're picking from to express one thing in the music, and they use the bends, the slides, the glissandos to express another thing that they're picking in their music. And so when you try to sit down and teach somebody music theory, if you're serious about not teaching them to prepare for a test, because I forgot my test book, I'm not going to be able to make up the test this semester, and probably never before or since. So the test is your life. You live the test. And whether you pass or fail is based entirely on whether you're happy with the music you create. You get extra points, extra bonus points, if it pleases other people. Because to me and to many musicians, playing home alone is not as much fun as playing out and having people hear you and applaud a little and say thank you, and at the end of the day say thanks for coming. You made our party more fun. That's part of it. Yeah, I mean there's ego here. There's selfhood. There's self-expression. And that's the only test that I'm teaching you to try to pass, and I'm teaching you to try to pass it because I find it pleasurable to do so. And if you find it pleasurable as well, then we'll go on together and do it. And if you don't, you'll wander off, and someday I'll wander off or die or get bored or something. Who knows? I don't know. Something will happen. But for the time being, this will go on. So now we've kind of sort of defined what is music. Music is a repeatable, structured arrangement of sound and silence through space and time. And I think that's a good place to end this particular conversation. Thank you for coming along.